let me take it from here, Amazing Atheist. You don't need to reply to this guy. Now, to Southern Avenger. The thing of it is, let's say Obama, because we all know big scary Obama is a socialist and a Muslim and loves to eat unborn babies. Let's say Obama does not like guns or free speech or any of the other things granted to us by the Bill of Rights. Why is it any more Obama's authority to dismiss these rights than the state? If the state imposes a gun law, how is that somehow more just than if the federal government imposes a gun law? How is it somehow more just that the First Amendment or any of the other 9 amendments prior to the 10th Amendment allow any government to impose their will upon the people and restrict them of their civil liberties? This is a very huge issue for me, because as someone who constantly is getting his freedom of speech banned and dismembered and violated, there is no one to speak up for me. There is no one to represent me. The lawyers refuse to because they want to stick to my property, my dick. The states' rights won't deal with it because it doesn't really concern states' rights. The only alternative left is the federal government to secure my liberties. And what is your answer for that? Oh, my liberties just don't matter enough? I'm just not of the qualified type of people to be considered to be free? Why? Because I'm not white enough? I'm not male enough? What is it? So, this is something very serious. Why is it that the state government can completely ignore civil liberties, and that's perfectly fine, but then when the federal government even so much as wants to make a nickel tax, oh, suddenly all your jimmies get rustled? That's what this really comes down to. Why does the state get to do what the federal government cannot? And how can you claim to be for liberty if you're going to say that it's okay when the state does it, just not when the federal government doesn't? Even though all evidence suggests that when the federal government does something, it tends to just be mundane things like passing a minor tax or reinterpreting the Constitution, like slavery or abortion or things like that. Things that you, as a libertarian, probably support anyway. You say you would obviously be opposed to slavery and segregation. I would hope so. You're probably pro-choice. So, what is your problem with the federal government? What is so frightening about the federal government? Isn't it at least equal and fair to say that we should all be under the same laws? I mean, really, if one state is going to have a bad gun law, shouldn't they all at least have a bad gun law so we're equal people? Or are you hoping to win the state lottery, that your state has the good law and some other poor sap in California or New Hampshire or Rhode Island or wherever, oh, fuck them. You know, that's what this comes down to. People should be treated equally. The law exists equally for all people. And I would say go even farther than rejecting states' rights. We should reject national rights. There should not be nations. We should all be bound by the same rules because we are human beings. We are all equal. We may not have equal opportunities, but that's only because of capitalism. And I'm not going to go into all of that. But essentially, we should all be treated the same way. Under the law, at least. And that implies the same laws in the same land, equally enforced the same way. How are you not seeing that? What are you hoping to gain by states' rights? Are you just hoping that you can impose your conservative rules in your state and just pretend that homosexuality does not exist outside your state, abortion does not exist outside your state? You know, this comes down to we have to discuss these issues as people, not as isolated vermin, just keeping our heads in the sand and pretending that these issues don't exist. And I don't know how else to reiterate that. I don't know how else to reiterate the fact that it comes down to, if you are for or against something, you should be for and against it everywhere, not in your own convenient little cubbyhole in the wall. And I don't even know how else to go into this, because at one time I used to be young and naive, and I used to have libertarian leanings, but I grew out of it. When you become an adult, you realize that there are too many problems in the world to just act like it's your problem. It's, your little group's problem. The problems of this world are much bigger than your little state or your little city or things like that. And we need to do away with all those vestiges of primitive times. You know why there was states' rights in the old days? Because people couldn't fucking move. That's why. Back then they used to travel by horseback. So essentially, that state was their world. They didn't know anything else but that state. So that's why they had states' rights. Because, hey, it wasn't like they were ever going to travel or go anywhere else. So different rules really did not apply to them. But nowadays, with mass travel, we have airplanes and cars and things like that. Now we're expected to know 10,000 fucking new laws just because one state from the next is so different. And for you to say that you are for minimal government, and meanwhile, every single state government can act completely differently, and we're expected to know those differences the moment we step foot in a new fucking state, is ridiculous. It's hypocritical, and it's idiotic. And I'm sick of libertarians making this excuse that they care so much about the Constitution when they completely ignore the first 9 amendments, only clinging to the 10th Amendment. And you know what's even more ironic is the fact that the Constitution clearly states that the 10th Amendment is no excuse to trump the first 9 amendments, which means that just because a state wants to do something does not excuse them to ignore every other right we have. And yet they do it anyway, and you support that. You support this idea that states and corporations know better than us as people, and as us as having God-given rights. And that pisses me off. That really frustrates me, that because of people like you, that's the reason why I cannot post anywhere online. That's the reason why I was robbed of my right to play the games that I paid for, because you believe that it's okay to rob individuals when it's a corporation doing it, because, oh, it's their game, and because of their terms of service that says they can do that to you, then they should do that to you. It's well within their rights to do that to you. But if I fucking went to Gabe and Naywell, punched him, and took his social security and credit cards, oh, I'm a criminal all of a sudden. But when a corporation does it, it's just fine, isn't it? That's your mentality. You care about the rich. You love the rich. You want to suck the rich's dick. And you cannot comprehend how mad that makes me. I would love to hurt you. Not because you've killed anybody, not because you've raped anybody, or anything like that. But because of you, people can kill people, and people can rape people, and usually, not only do they get away with it, but they get worshipped for it. They get worshipped for being robber barons, and being criminals, and being con men, and taking from people, taking their dignity and self-respect, and taking their rights, which is much more detrimental than just taking their fucking property. Property is not a right. It's not a right either morally, nor is it a right within the Constitution. And yet, that's the second thing you cling to besides states' rights. What I seem to be gathering here is that you know absolutely nothing about the United States government, about our law system, and you are anti-American. You are anti-American in the sense that you have completely turned upside down what it means to be a free citizen within the American borders. And you've turned it into this plutocracy where unless you are a corporate entity, or unless you have this excuse as a private contractor or a private individual making up the rules as he goes along in his land, in his apartment, it's my property, blah, blah, or states laws, pure democracy, blah, the Confederate States, then you're fucked. And I cannot begin to fathom how evil, how insane you have to be to support that. That's the only explanation. You are either evil or you're crazy. And if you were crazy, I do not think you would be this competent. I do not think you would be this well-spoken and articulated if you were simply crazy. So that leads me just to believe that you're evil. And, well, I guess you have to be a little crazy nonetheless, because you are by no means a corporate executive. You don't own shit, but yet you support this thing anyway. So what I can only come to the conclusion of is that you have these wild dreams that one day you're going to be Donald Trump, and then you get to fire whoever you want. You get to fire the black people and the women and the gays, and you get to treat people like shit and get away with it. And because of your fantasy, it has molded your political stance, and the rest of us have to suffer for it. The rest of us have to suffer for your insufferable, ridiculous dreams of grandeur. Thanks a lot, asshole. So, I guess that's it.